Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. 3 years have passed since aliens arrived on Earth unnoticed, catching everyone by surprise. The planet is strengthening its defenses, with the United States, Russia, and China leading the way. A new satellite is being deployed in orbit around Earth to monitor deep space, so that no alien object can approach the planet unnoticed again. When the satellite is opened, a strange alien ship can be seen, moving its tentacle-like parts. Suddenly, a spacecraft is launched from it, heading towards Earth and entering the atmosphere. Meanwhile, somewhere in the ocean, a fishing boat can be seen, with fishermen working and chatting. One of them looks out over the water and sees the alien object fall. Seeing this, he does not share what he saw with the others. Next, the object is seen moving underwater, like a submarine. 4 months later, Julia is seen running with her dog. As they enter an apartment complex, the dog escapes and does not return when she calls him. She asks the men with her to help her find him. Later, while sitting in a robotics class, her friend asks about some new information from the lab. She tells him that if she shares any information, her guards will have to shoot him on the spot. After class, Julia's friend tries to express his love for her, but she consciously interrupts him, saying he'll be safer if they remain friends. Their guards escort them to her father's car. Her father, General Lebedev, talks to Julia's friend, calling him Google. The boy boasts about working at Rostelecom, and they leave him there. He enters the building, and when security asks for his identification, he shows that he is just an intern. Meanwhile, Julia and her father are still driving, and he jokes with her about taking her and smuggling her to another country, where she could hide. They arrive at a Russian Ministry of Defense research laboratory, where a robot is seen breaking down doors and crushing a car. Julia's father talks to a scientist from the laboratory, asking about it. The scientist explains that it is some kind of biotechnology. The robot is being controlled by a human, talking to them through a communicator. The general comments that it is a Russian extraterrestrial co-production. The scientist then explains that Julia is the key to understanding how everything works. Meanwhile, somewhere in the facilities, Julia is participating in an experiment. The lead scientist interrogates her about her encounter with the alien spacecraft and monitors her reactions, not just her responses. When he asks about her friend who died in the encounter, her heart rate increases, and then again when he asks why she helped the alien. They ask about her boyfriend Artyom, and she becomes upset, not wanting to answer. Suddenly, the boyfriend is brought into the lab. He starts talking to her, and she becomes incredibly upset, telling the scientist to stop the experiment and get her out of there. He apologizes for killing her, while she tries to free herself from her restraints. As he continues talking, the scientist encourages him, and suddenly there is a huge energy wave. Her father runs to the lab and pulls her out of the pool, while Artyom is being escorted, asking why he is locked up when she is free. Later, Julia and her father talk, and she begs him to leave her alone for a moment, without her guards or anyone else around her. He agrees and leaves, then meets a soldier, Ivan, telling him he will have to take a night shift and change into some regular clothes. That night, Julia is drinking in a bar. She spots Ivan and buys him a drink to let him know she's keeping an eye on him. Then he joins her at the bar. She offers him a drink before they leave, but a second man appears saying they have to go. The man introduces himself as Heiken and says Julia needs to come with him, whether she wants to or not. Ivan and Heiken start fighting, but Julia hits the soldier on the head, knocking him out. She and Heiken leave the bar and call the alien ship, called RA. She tracks where they are and finds them for a ride, leading them to a car with 2 passengers. She takes control of the digitized car and starts driving, talking to the duo through the car's communicator, but soon Ivan catches up to them. The car manages to shake off Ivan and leaves, being careful not to harm people on the road. Ivan catches up with them again on a motorcycle and calls General Lebedev to inform him of the situation. The general tells him to follow them but begins to evacuate the Ministry of Defense laboratory, under the explanation that the aliens have returned to Earth. Back in the car, Heiken tells Julia that she is in danger because they went too far with the experiments, so they have to fly away immediately. The car is speeding and almost hits a pedestrian but stops instantly in front of him, prompting the other passengers to get out. Heiken and Julia continue in the car, with Ivan pursuing them and shooting at one of the wheels. He causes a car accident, but RA tracks them from above and manages to block Ivan, leaving him behind. Ivan calls the general to inform him that he lost them. RA then takes Riken and Julia to a remote location in the middle of the forest. She reluctantly enters but is suddenly greeted by her dog who is there. Julia tells Hiken that she thought he was dead. It seems he was the alien she helped in the previous encounter. He says that last time everything went wrong. They enter the house and talk about how he has been living on Earth. He tells her that he has adapted to life on the planet. Someone knocks on the door, and when Julia opens it, she sees that it's Google. She gets annoyed, though that's what he tried to tell her before. Hiken tells her that he should have left after the first encounter but violated protocol and stayed on RA, near Earth. They kiss and enjoy the moment together, while the spaceship RA begins to change its physical form, as if the connection between the couple is causing it. The next morning, Julia calls her father and tells him she's with Hiken. She tells him she has to leave because she no longer belongs to Earth and asks him not to tell anyone. However, the general orders his men to trace her signal. Julia goes back inside the house, where Hiken is waiting for her with breakfast. Meanwhile, a tactical unit has surrounded the house with Hiken and Julia inside and is ready to invade. General Lebedev tells them to stand down, but RA intercepts the call and changes the general's command to shoot to kill. The unit storms into the house, Hiken fights with some of the soldiers, then the two escape. Their ship is activated and waits for them in the river. Hiken jumps in, but the unit follows them and shoots at Julia as she's entering the ship. Hiken flies away. Suddenly, an order is given to launch a missile at them, but Hiken eliminates the missile in the air. The ship is still damaged and falls through the sky and into the river. Hiken tries to reach RA, but RA tells him that Julia needs to be eliminated before he can fix his ship. He refuses, and RA says he also needs to be eliminated. The general and Ivan try to reach them, receiving different types of misinformation that RA intercepted. They find out that the space defense is after the ship, with the general confused about who gave that order. Helicopters are seen heading towards the river, switching to combat mode and firing at the ship. Back at the base, Artyom tricks his guard and manages to get into the robot, steal it, and flee with it. He reaches a bridge over the river and hears that there is a unit behind the ship, ready to shoot them down. The ship slides through the water but is hit by two helicopters. It flies out of the water and falls through the air, with water following. Eventually, it crashes to the ground. The helicopters are positioning, receiving the order from RA to kill them. When Artyom, in the robotic suit, arrives and jumps onto one of the aircraft and destroys it. On the ground, the general reaches the ship and goes to check on Julia, but she and Hiken have already escaped. He carries her to an ambulance, where they meet Artyom, who sees that she's injured and says he'll get a doctor for her, but Hiken tells him that all she needs is water. Artyom signals for a car, and they steal it, leaving its owner behind this time. While they are driving, Hiken explains how powerful RA is and how he can control human technology. Artyom asks what he wants, and he says he just wants to eliminate Julia. Meanwhile, Julia's father goes to the Ministry of Defense, where a special meeting has been called. He interrupts the meeting asking why those orders were given when they were pursuing the ship. The Deputy Prime Minister tells him he's out of line and orders him to sit down. He then asks the Space Defense to explain their actions. They say the orders came from the general. A recording is played where the general's voice can be heard giving the order. The Deputy Premier orders the news to be played at the meeting, where the devastation in Moscow from the pursuit is evident. The media blames Julia for what happened and plays a fake video of her, making her look like a terrorist who was on the side of the aliens, threatening the city. They reveal that not only the video but the entire news program is fake, being broadcast from elsewhere and not from a TV station. General Lebedev says the aliens are responsible for this. He calls for retaliation, to which the Deputy Premier says he needs evidence to confirm such action. General Lebedev asks for special protocols to be established in the meantime, saying that only analog technology should be used for all their communication. The Deputy Premier agrees, and preparations begin for the exchange. At the same time, Hiken, Julia, and Artyom arrive at a store to get water for her. When he finds the right type of water and goes to the cashier, everyone's phones start ringing. Everyone in the store is talking about Julia and a possible terrorist attack. All people start receiving the same message about her, that they need to find her and eliminate her. When Hiken returns to the car, a woman in the car next to them recognizes Julia and informs a nearby police patrol about her. Artyom speeds off with the car as the police begin to chase them. Ivan receives the same message while escorting the ship back to the Ministry of Defense. The false message tells him that the attack caused by Julia injured his son. All digital media is flooded by RA with the same information about Julia, making her public enemy number one. Google receives a visit from a police officer asking about Julia. His grandmother sends the officer away, and when they close the door, she asks where he hid his friends. They were in the closet. Next moment, Artyom and Hyken submerge Julia in the water. Hyken tells him that she is no longer human. He says that the pain is changing her, making her extremely, if not dangerously, powerful. RA calculated that her death can save everyone else from her power, and that's why it wants to destroy her. Later, Google and Artyom intentionally get Hyken drunk and decide to take him to the Ministry of Defense. Artyom doesn't give Google a choice about it. When they arrive, they are met by Julia's father ready to kill them. With that, Google says where Julia is. The general confronts Ryken and asks him to give the coordinates of RA, which are known only to him, and says he has to decide between her and his people. Ivan tries to contact his wife but fails. He sees the news about Julia, while the general enters telling his men to prepare an observatory and the satellite with the coordinates he received from Hyken. The general tells Ivan to get Julia but to bring her directly to him, without informing anyone else. The observatory locates RA, so the general contacts the deputy premier about the next step. They decide to engage with it violently but need to destroy a satellite so it doesn't find out what they're doing and create different problems. The army sends Google to Rostelecom to take down their satellite. After the satellite falls, they will only have a few seconds before it restarts. They will destroy RA with a super-secret weapon that the deputy premier pretends not to even have, though he does. Meanwhile, Julia wakes up in the bathtub. Her injuries have disappeared. She prepares to leave Google's grandmother's apartment when Ivan shows up at the door. He is taking her somewhere, but she doesn't know that he blames her for the attacks. He confronts her with the information, threatening her that if his son dies, she will die too. The general gives the order to launch the special missile and destroy the satellite as well. They hope the missile will destroy RA and celebrate when it does. But the general is not convinced. He wants a full report and visual confirmation to make sure the alien ship was destroyed. Meanwhile, people gather in the streets and demand Julia's prosecution. Ivan is leading her through the crowd. He still doesn't believe her, but eventually takes her to the ministry to her father and the others. Ivan is disappointed with the general and immediately resigns. Hyken uses a phone to communicate with RA. RA tells him that it's ready for retaliation, as it doesn't believe humans deserve anything. RA tells Hyken that he can fly back, but he refuses, still believing in humanity. The powerful ship initiates a destruction process on the planet, seen from everywhere, including the tower of the Ministry of Defense. RA is furious with humans for trying to use its technology to create weapons like Julia. It creates a huge dome of water around the center of Moscow, where Julia is. The place starts to be flooded by water emerging from the ground, causing chaos in the streets and among the people. The army tries everything but fails to destroy the dome. They begin evacuating people, only to tell them that their only hope is to climb as high as they can and stay on the roofs of buildings. The general tells Hyken to get Julia and take her to the helicopter on the roof. He then picks her up and heads for the helicopter, but Hyken stays behind and leaves Artyom taking care of Julia. Hyken goes back to the general and asks for his ship, telling him that he can try to destroy RA if he can hit it with the ship. The general, realizing it's a one-way ticket, wants to go instead, but that's not possible, as only Hyken can operate it manually. The general evacuates his men but stays behind to help Hyken navigate towards RA. The helicopter with Julia and Artyom loses altitude and needs to land but starts to crash, and the two jump into the water. They are pulled onto one of the roofs with the other people in the disaster area. The water keeps rising, and Julia can't accept that all people might get hurt because of her, so she surrenders. She asks Artyom to kill her, and the others around them here. Meanwhile, the general manages to get Hyken as close to RA as possible, until the water enters the building and floods it. Back on the roof, Julia is pleading to die, wanting to end all the suffering she caused. Ivan is there and sees her. Going after her with a gun, Artyom tries to protect her but gets shot in the chest. The two edges of water start to approach each other, and soon it will drown everyone there. Julia asks Ivan to kill her, but he doesn't shoot, so the water overtakes them. Hyken is getting closer and closer to RA, eventually accelerating the ship towards it. Underwater, Julia's bracelet activates and sends water streams towards RA, while Hyken also approaches. Julia, using her powers, pulls RA out of the water, making it visible for the aerial attack. Military planes start shooting at it when they see it, and Julia continues pushing the ship out. Soon the army launches a missile over the ship, destroying it. Suddenly, the water starts to recede, and people start to rise to breathe. The general is still alive too. Hyken's ship is pushed back into the remaining water, while RA is dying. After Ra's fall, Hyken appears on the roof and reunites with Julia, and they embrace relieved that everything is over. However, they mourn the loss of Artyom. In the final moments, the general attends a fake funeral for his daughter. And later, a helicopter flies over Kamchatka. A person exits the aircraft and walks away with the dog. It's the general tracking a specific location, and when he arrives there, he finds Julia and Hyken. They hug and wonder where to go next. Julia touches the water, and a spaceship starts to appear, indicating they will head to an unknown future and out of Earth.